afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the third session of today's conference. This post-lunch session is on Bodhicitta, or the awakening mind. The moderator for our session is Khensur Jangchup Choeden Rinpoche, and the panelists are Venerable Serkong Tsenshap Rinpoche, Professor Madhumita Chattopadhyaya, and Venerable Dr. Karma Sonam Palmo. May I request all the panelists to please take their places on the dais. Allow me to briefly introduce our eminent panelists. Venerable Khensur Jangchup Choeden Rinpoche was born in Himachal Pradesh, India, and joined the Garden Shartse Nornling Monastery in his teens, where he completed his monastic education and earned the Geshe La Rampa degree in 1997, followed by the Geshe Nang Rampa. A disciple of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Rinpoche has traveled widely, teaching the Dharma across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. He served as abbot of Garden Shartse Monastery from 2009 to 17 and is currently the General Secretary of the International Buddhist Confederation, continuing his leadership in global Buddhist dialogue and education. We are very honored to have you as our moderator this afternoon. Our panelists, Venerable Serkong Tsenshap Rinpoche of the Serkong Institute of Buddhist Studies, was born in the Spiti Valley in 1984. He was recognized by His Holiness the Dalai Lama as the reincarnation of Kyabje Tsenshap Serkong Rinpoche, who lived from 1914 to 1983, one of 7 master debate partners to His Holiness. Rinpoche is the head of Tabo Monastery in Spiti, founded in 966. A warm welcome to you, Venerable Rinpoche. Professor Madhumita Chattopadhyaya of Jadavpur University teaches philosophy at Jadavpur University. She has been well trained in both Western and Indian philosophical traditions. Her area of specialization is Buddhist philosophy, with emphasis on Buddhist epistemology, logic, and semantics. She has authored 7 books on Buddhism and contributed articles in peer-reviewed national and international journals. She has been awarded 6 international fellowships for visiting countries such as Japan, USA, Hungary, and England. Thank you, ma'am, for your gracious presence. And our final panelist, Venerable Dr. Karma Sonam Palmo, is a Tibetan Buddhist nun born in the Tibetan exile community of Rumtek, Sikkim. She holds a PhD from the University of Tasmania, Australia, in Asian philosophy and gender studies, and Acharya and Shastri degrees from the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, CIHTS, Sarnath. Currently, she is working on a Tibetan Sanskrit-English trilingual Abhidharma thematic lexicon in the research department of CIHTS. As visiting faculty at universities in India and abroad, she has taught courses on Buddhist philosophy, gender and Buddhism, and women in Buddhism. She is coordinator for the 5 College Consortium's Tibetan Studies in India program, an exchange program between Smith College USA and CIHTS, and Buddhist massive open online courses offered by UGC and CIHTS on the Swayam platform. A warm welcome to you, Venerable Dr. Karma Sonam Palmo. And now I hand over to our moderator, Venerable Khensur Jangchup Choeden Rinpoche.
I take your permission to let me do the moderating task from here. Okay, so First of all, we have our first speaker, presenter, Venerable Serkong Tsenshap Rinpoche. Rinpoche, you have 20 minutes to speak. Please, carry on.
You make the path that combines emptiness and compassion grow clearer and clearer. Lord of the teaching and beings in the snow land of Tibet, to you, the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I pray, we pray, may all your wishes to be spontaneously fulfilled. So, first of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak on a Bodhicitta, which is actually very profound subject. That person like me, it is not. I'm not suitable for this this teaching, this topic actually. As this morning we have learned a lot from all the speakers that Atisa went all the way to Siling, Indonesia, to receive this teaching, sacrifice his own life. In our life we have so many times when if there's something difficult, then we say, doesn't matter, even I have to give my own life, I will do it. So for Atisa, Bodhicitta is the one to give his life for it. But for a person like me, I feel so honored to just mimic or to copy something, to tell how that important. Not through my experience, practice, but just to be fortunate to repeat it again and again due to the kindness of His Holiness Dalai Lama and my teachers. So, in here I just wanted to, in my thesis actually, what I have written down is about, from a young age, I have this great question. If Atisa is already so great, he's praised and he's a great scholar already when he's in Nalanda or the Takshishila, Vikamashla. And then still, why he has to go to Indonesia? That time there is no Indigo or Air India. But he has to go through all this. Just thinking about that, people forget about going to Indonesia. But then why this great master has to go all the way there? And he knows about the a great amount of teachings on Bodhicitta actually. Like Shandideva has already left this beautiful teaching where Bodhisattva's life. In there, he taught about Bodhicitta. And then there are so many other texts that he can study, and he's well known on this practice. So then one day, when I was curious, and then thanks to these people who organized this meeting or conference, so I went to my teacher and then checked with him that should I take this invitation. And then my teacher said, what is the topic? My teacher, when he heard the topic is about Bodhicitta, and he folded his hand and said, do it. So I am left with no choice to be here. So I need to do a preparation. The first thing I wanted to talk about is, why did he go to Indonesia? I'm so curious about it, because I checked with my teacher also. He kindly shared that even I have wrote that in my thesis, and I'm pretty sure most of you will not read it. So I will bring that up a bit. There is a hint in the Stages of Path by Lama Tsongkhapa, because Lama Tsongkhapa is one of the greatest scholar who kind of research about Adisha. In there, in the Stages of Path, he mentioned something that I will quote that down. Therefore, all the glorious Lord Adisha held the Madhumita view, and the Silingpa held the Chittamatra view, asserting true aspects, because Adisha achieved Bodhicitta in dependence upon him, one who knows the essential points of scripture. If they look at the Adisha's scriptural biography, where he holds Silingpa as the kindest among all his gurus, there lies a great understanding of essential points of the path. So we need to highlight this very strongly. People who knows a little bit of the literature and the understanding of all the points of the Dharma, and then we will hear Lama Tsongkhapa hints, that person will understand why he has to go to Siling. And then this I have seen without my teacher pointing it, but then my teacher one time he told me that at the time of where Adisha in studying or practicing Bodhicitta in India, I think people normally don't discuss or practice much about in a Tibetan we say Ngodogen, Abhisamaya Alankara. In English it's called ornament of realization. Was that clear? Clear realization. Thank you. So that's why he went there. There was one kind of this doubt among the great scholars. And then that kind of doubt becomes so clear when the Lama Tsongkhapa in the later part, in the Stages of Path, he mentioned something very interestingly, which I will not quote, I will just brief it. He said something like, it is sometimes we can see when somebody on the path who has to go to path, they need to have this strong realization on emptiness. Through the wisdom, they go on the path by path, towards path. But Lama Tsongkhapa sadly stated here, said in the Stages of Path, he said, it's so sad to see we cannot notice much anything about with the influence of Bodhicitta going into the path to path is not even there is a single word written down by great masters. Where is that lost? So that's why that looks like a hint that Adisha, the great Adisha, even he has lots and lots of teachers who taught about Bodhicitta. But I think, because this is thesis, I can bring my theory. So I think great Lama Silingpa, one of his main practice is Bodhicitta, and then he has the great realization on that. So whatever he does, practices, he always try to practice by having influence by the Bodhicitta. So that is something people who want to research about why Atisa has to go to Indonesia, I think the researchers can get some kind of a hint somewhere there. I'm not a researcher, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a perfect teacher. So, but somehow this is my kind of a pure doubt. So maybe in the future, people who want to take this forward, I think it might be helpful for you. That's why I'm sharing. The secondly, now when we talk about Bodhicitta, many people think Bodhicitta is only to get a fully enlightenment. There's nothing too much to do with day-to-day life, actually. To enjoy life. That's how some people think like that. And regarding about also practicing Dharma, it's more like for someone who's reserved for that. So the great Shantideva, he said something. If I do not interchange my happiness for others' pain, enlightenment will be never be attained. And even in the samsara, joy will fly from me. So to be noted here is, and even in the samsara, joy will fly from me. Now this is something that, as my thesis contains like three important outlines. This is the second one. So normally my teacher will always try to give me this direct, very strong teaching, say, in this world, how people describe happiness. So people want to have wealth and a big name and well recognized, everything. But it's more like you are going straight forward to look for this kind of happiness. But once you have the Bodhicitta, ultimately all this comes to you. So it's not like you are running after the money is coming after you. Similarly, once who have the Bodhicitta, all this method that we are trying to bring for our own happiness in our life, so that's why Shantideva always prays to the Buddha, saying, I'm comparing you with the other person. In this world, many people are so busy to make their own happiness, but fail. But you are the one, give everything up, and you got all the happiness, all the praise, all this. So, what is the secret behind you is this Bodhicitta. So this is how Shantideva recognized Bodhicitta in the Buddha. So now I have, I think, 6 minutes, right? 6, 7 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So then now I just wanted to go to my third point. The Bodhicitta. The Bodhicitta this is so crucial because it's also known as the gateway. Once you have that, that's the gateway for the fully enlightenment. And then what makes Bodhicitta so important, necessary, is great compassion. And then as this morning we learned from the speakers saying that all these 7 causes and the result are the practice by the Buddha Maitreya. So normally we understood this sequence, this practice is to generate bodhicitta. But my teacher always thinks this is actually to generate the great compassion, because the 7th one is the result. The most important, what really, the 6th one is the most important, which is the great compassion. Many people think, oh, I wanted to have a bodhicitta, that's why I'm practicing all this sequence. But people never say, I wanted to have a great bodhicitta, the great compassion, that's why I wanted all this sequence. So then there is a problem. So now to the most important, when person who has the great understanding of a great compassion, then automatically what makes most important is, unless you don't become a Buddha, then there is no way to thoroughly, profoundly to reach and benefit the sentient being's wish. So that we can study and read how Buddha's so-called omniscient mind is so precisely helpful to bring someone from we or some great scholars or teachers can spend billions on billions or millions of time spending and not losing their courage and giving them a guidance, but Buddha does not do any this kind of effort. Any effort. That's why we say effortlessly. Buddha is effortlessly. So that really takes my heart away, because I don't like effort. And I want to become effortless. Not to just make money or name, but if you really wanted to help somebody, even in the family. Every time you this is the greatest teaching I received from one of my teachers, saying to set up a motivation to help somebody is called also effort. If you don't have any effort, if you don't have any motivation, slightly one motivation to help somebody, it's like taking a breath. If this could be our habit, then there's no doubt we will tirelessly, as Shantideva says, until the space remain, may I remain, and then benefit all the sentient beings. This, I think, becomes so important. So that's why all these teachings and the practices that what I'm just trying to share, and what I learned from my teachers to you, it comes from the Atisa. And this went to Tibet. And now this morning one of the speakers said, now Tibetans not only come from exile, but they bring this back to home. So now we need to treasure it. And many, actually the outsiders, the Westerners are so interested. And now we have to move forward and preserve. So this kind of conference is regularly needed. And as Geshe Lhatola mentioned, this is the conference on Atisa. Now maybe there will be all the rest of the 17 Nalanda Panditas conference will be there. That's all I wish. And then I really wanted to thank you so much, and this is the best way to celebrate His Holiness' 90th birthday. So thank you so much for giving this more opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Most Venerable Serkong Tsenshap Rinpoche, for your wonderful talk. You spoke very eloquently about the importance of why the Atisa have to go to Indonesia. What is the main reason behind that? And then you spoke about the importance of the Bodhicitta and practical feeling of the kind of the greatness of the universal compassion or the great compassion, which is essential for the generation of the Bodhicitta. So you spoke very eloquently and from your experiences. Thank you very much for that. Now next speaker we have is Professor Madhumita Chattopadhyaya ji. Please carry on the stage.
I have my PPT. Number 3. Good afternoon, everybody. Today we are, we have all assembled here to celebrate celebrate the occasion of remembering the deeds and philosophy of Atisa Dipankara, which is not commonly done in India. Though we know that Atisa plays a very, very important role in Buddhist philosophy. Now, today I have selected as the title of my thesis, Mahayana Account of Bodhicitta, Views of Asanga and Atisa Compared. So, you may wonder why I have tried to bring in the notion of Asanga in a conference on Atisa. But my logic is that the notion of this session is on the notion of Bodhicitta. And Bodhicitta, this is one of the fundamental notions found in Buddhist philosophy. And this Bodhicitta is dealt with in all the systems, whether it is Hinayana or Mahayana or Tantrayana. But most work has been done in the Mahayana tradition. Okay, so without taking into consideration what has been said in the Hinayana text, I have concentrated mainly on the Mahayana account. And in the Mahayana account, we find that the philosophical schools which we all commonly know, especially the works of Nagarjuna, constituting the school of Madhumita, the works of Maitreyanatha, Asanga, Bosubandhu, etc., constituting the philosophy of the, constituting the school of Yogachara Vijnanavada. We have here the most philosophical discussions on the Bodhicitta. Now, in the Mahayana account, though we have the Mahayana philosophy, as we all know, especially the Yogachara account, was done by Maitreyanatha and Asanga, and later on by Vasubandhu, sorry, Dharmakirti, Dignago, and others. But I am not here dealing much with the later thinkers, rather because the later thinkers like Dignago, Dharmakirti gave emphasis on the epistemological aspect. This Bodhicitta actually is dealing with enlightenment, because the very term Bodhicitta refers to the enlightened mind. Okay, so it is something we can say involves some kind of spirituality. And we want to see actually how Asanga, in the initial stage of the Yogachara school, had said, and what development or what changes we find in Atisa. Because Atisa, as we have already know, belongs to the 11th century onwards. So it is a gap of 700 years. Within this 700 years, what change did happen that constitutes the that will be dealt with later in my paper, when I will submit the paper. But for the present, I will be speaking mainly on the views of Asanga and Atisa. Though most of the discussions on Bodhicitta we find in the Bodhicharya Avatara by Shantideva, and also in the Shikha Samuccaya, but I have confined my discussion to Asanga. I have just quoted from Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara to consider, to show the importance of Bodhicitta in Mahayana. There it has been said that Bhavacharaka bandhano varaka sugatanam sutta uchyate kshanena so nara maro loko bandhanya bhavati smodito eva bodhicitte. There is a spelling mistake. Bhavati should be V. The wretched one who is bound by the fetters of existence instantly is proclaimed a son of the Buddhas. He becomes worthy of being praised in the worlds of men and of immortals when the thought of enlightenment arises. Now let us first discuss what the term Bodhicitta means. Generally, an individual is regarded as a bodhisattva when he possesses the concept of Bodhicitta. So this indicates the importance of the Bodhicitta, because in the Mahayana tradition, Bodhisattva occupies the most important position after the Buddha. Bodhicitta, this term is composed of two terms, Bodhi and Chitta. The feminine verbal noun Bodhi is derived from the root Bodh, means to be awake, meaning knowledge or enlightenment. It actually signifies the state of being Buddha, or the quality that defines one as Buddha. in general, the term means perception, comprehension, wisdom, enlightenment, and awakening. Chitta, on the other hand, means mind, thought, concentration. The term Bodhicitta as a whole is understood as the mind of enlightenment, or the mind turned towards enlightenment, desire for awakening. Its most common usage, the term Bodhicitta refers to the resolution to attain Bodhi or enlightenment in order to liberate all. Now, in the basic text, the Mahayana Sutra Lankar, the essence of Bodhicitta has been very nicely presented. It has been said, Karuna Mula Ishta Sada Shatta Hitashaya Dharmadi Mokkha Tat Gyano Paryashti Alambanas Tatha. This consciousness has compassion as its root. It is a voluntary action having as its goal the welfare of all beings. Liberation and dharma are also the objects of such consciousness. Its nature is that it is full of merits as well as knowledge. Punno Gyano Maya. And so, possession of such consciousness recommends or brings in the escalation of virtues or the good Shubha Vriddhi Anusangsha, and is said to be always associated with the cultivation of the paramitas. Now, coming to the view of Asanga, we find that I have water. In the text Bodhisattva Bhumi, though this notion of Bodhicitta has been discussed in several texts of Asanga, like Yogachara Bhumi, Sravaka Bhumi, and others, I have confined, for brevity, I have confined my discussion to the second chapter of the Bodhisattva Bhumi, where, after describing the Gotra or the family name, Asanga proceeds to discuss the characteristics of such enlightened mind, Bodhicitta. There it has been said that Bodhicitta is initially of the nature of aspirational prayer, Sammak Pranidhana Svabhava. This is because in the beginning the Bodhisattva has such a kind of prayer to attain the true enlightenment himself and to accomplish at the same time the welfare of all sentient beings in such a way that all of them can be established in the state of nirvana. Thus, Bodhicitta as an aspirational prayer consists of two parts, one regarding oneself and the other regarding the other people. Now, according to Asanga, this Bodhicitta is Sarva Sattadhisthana Kayo Bak Mano Duscharito Boirodhika. That is, it is virtuous and possesses all the qualities which are supremely virtuous. It is excellent in that it leads to one's own welfare. Again, as leading to the welfare of others, it is supremely excellent, Paramo Bhadra. It is beneficial or virtuous, Kollano, as it is good and leads to one's own enlightenment, and supremely beneficial, Paramo Kollano, for the others as leading to their welfare. The other characteristic is that such Bodhicitta is opposed to all sorts of misdeeds with regard to mind, body and speech present in sentient beings. Now, I will skip some, and Asanga points out that this Bodhicitta, when possessed by the Bodhisattva, generates some kind of strength in the mind of the Bodhisattva himself. And what are the strengths? Asanga speaks of 4 strengths. Strength regarding oneself, Odhatma Bala. Strength regarding others, Paro Bala. Strength regarding the reason, Hetu Bala. And strength regarding application, Prayoga Bala. When we move on to Atisa, we find that Atisa sorry. In the text mentioned by previous speakers about the Bodhipatha Pradipa, Atisa points out that the primary step for the attainment of the supreme enlightenment, 7-fold worship have been recommended and or taught by the different teachers. The next step recommended is the generation of Bodhicitta. Then, with a mind full of loving kindness for all the sentient beings and thinking about the different varieties of sufferings that these beings suffer from, the Bodhisattva should generate Bodhicitta. And the resolution that the Bodhisattva must take for the generation of the Bodhicitta has nicely been expressed by Atisa. Utpadayami sambodho chittam nathasya sammukham nimantraye jagat sarvam daridra mochito asmi tat. How many minutes? 3 minutes. That is, in the presence of all the teachers, I will generate a complete enlightened mind. I will invite all the beings as guests to liberate them from all sorts of miseries. In order to generate this enlightened mind, the individual needs to practice the morality of asceticism. He needs to refrain from non-virtuous actions and desires and tread in the footsteps of the enlightened ones. In essence, one's purity of body, speech and mind means keeping vows with a mind for progress. At the same time, it has been stressed again and again that in the process of generating Bodhicitta, one should not have any craving for the quick attainment of one's own enlightenment. Rather, one should have such deliberation that one is ready to live infinite lives for the sake of even one sentient being. Since, according to the Mahayana tradition, wisdom, that is progga, devoid of means, upaya. Means is translated here for upaya. And means devoid of wisdom, both amount to bondage. Wisdom and means taken separately are to be abandoned. That is, for Atisa, simply wisdom is not sufficient to generate bodhicitta, nor is upaya. Now, what is upaya? Atisa tells very nicely, dano paramita daya, sarvehi kushala dharma upaya kothita janoi. So this means that by upaya is meant the performance of the different paramitas, like dano paramita, etc. To be able to attain wisdom, especially to be able to benefit others, generation of supernatural powers is absolutely indispensable. For such supernatural powers, what is needed most is the cultivation of samatha. And for this cultivation, one should first procure the requisites for samatha. Samatha is mindfulness. When one is able to obtain these provisions, it will be possible for one to concentrate on a single object and thus be led to the achievement of supernatural powers or ovigga. Such achievements will enable the individual to render extensive service for the benefit of others. And in the Bodhipatha Pradipa, he tells very categorically that it is by no means true that Buddhahood can be attained through the exclusive understanding of the theory of shunyata and selflessness. Knowledge of the void nature of both the subjective and the objective will enable one to cut off all sophistical differentiations. So the knowledge is to be supplemented through the practice of the Brahma Viharas. And both Asanga and Vasubandhu, both Asanga and Atisa recognize the importance of progga and means like the practices of Brahma Vihara in the generation of Bodhicitta. Atisa goes a step further and recommends esoteric practices as an additional means in the generation of Bodhicitta. By virtue of the esoteric power of the mantras, the individual will obtain significant capabilities which will enable him to collect greater merits and help others in their well-being. For learning such esoteric practices, one needs the guidance of an appropriate guru. This justifies, in verse 62, as mentioned by Pujaji, Guru prasanne sampurna acharyasya abhishechane sarva papo vishuddhatma siddhi.
Madhumita, are you done?
Yes, just 1 minute. Okay. This justifies the need of initiation into the Tantric Mahajana school by Atisa, which was not felt by the earlier Mahajana Yogachara thinkers like Asanga. In Asanga, we have mention of the role of Guru as a Kalyana Mitra, who always is ready to help his friend. So there is no question of appeasing prasannata. But later on, when the notion of Tantrajana came into practice, Atisa had to admit the role of the Guru in the origination of the Bodhicitta, along with the practices of the virtues and attainment of wisdom. Herein lies the difference of Atisa from his predecessor Asanga. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Madhumita Chattopadhyaya. Thank you very much for presenting very smartly and very kind of skillfully the comparative presentation of the Bodhicitta as presented by Asanga and Atisa, and the differences and then the equalities. Thank you very much for that. Now we have next speaker, Venerable Dr. Karma Sonam Palmo. Please carry on.
Buddham cha dharman cha ganotmam chayavadi bodhim sharanam gatosmi danadi krityascha kritar mayavi buddho bhavayam jagato hitaya. So this is the refuge and Bodhicitta recitation that is recited in all the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, which goes, the Tibetan was recited several times this morning, so I'll just skip that. And it is, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the Supreme Sangha, and with all the, through the merit of my performing generosity and so on, may I become Buddha for the benefit of sentient beings and the world. So this is the recitation that I just recited in Sanskrit in Atisa's own language. With this, my respect to all the venerable Sangha members, Rinpoches, and the distinguished scholars and administrators and everyone present here. I'm deeply honored to be part of this great conference celebrating life and legacy of the great Atisa Dipankara Srijana ji. And I thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be part of this great conference. Thank you so much. And with all the rich, stories and the great deeds of life, about the life and deeds of the Jogye Atisa this morning, my paper right now is titled as Bodhicitta, as presented in Jogye Atisa's Bodhipatpadipa. So I will try to cover briefly how Bodhicitta, or the arousing of the Bodhicitta, is presented or given in Jogye's Bodhipatpadipa, the seminal text that we all heard about the greatness of that text this morning. So the arrival of the great Indian Buddhist Acharya Jogye in Tibet, as we all know, marked a pivotal moment in Tibetan Buddhist history, because when he reached Tibet from India, Buddhism there had entered a period of decline, as we all know, following significant social and political upheaval. So during his decade-long stay in Tibet, Adishu composed the Bodhipatpadipa, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, at the request of his disciple Jangchup, a work specifically tailored for his Tibetan audience that would prove foundational for centuries to come. Because the Bodhipatpadipa as a text established the textual tradition known as Lamrim, stages of the path, inspiring similar compositions across all 4 Tibetan Buddhist schools, starting from Gampopa, who was the closest to him. Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation, that is from the Kagyu school, and then Tube Gongsel of Sakyapentita, the clarifying the sages' intent by Sakyapentita from Sakya school, and Jesong Khapa's Lamrim Chemo, or the great treatises on the stages of the path to enlightenment from the Gelug tradition, and Patrul Rinpoche's The Words of My Perfect Teacher in Nyingma. So Bodhipatpadipa as a text laid the foundation for all these great treatises on stages of the path that came in Tibetan Buddhist history. The treatise Bodhipatpadipa emerged at a critical juncture when Tibet remained fragmented. We all know about that story. And various Buddhist traditions appeared contradictory, leaving them, the practitioners there uncertain about how different forms of Buddha's teachings related to one another. Hence, the tradition in Tibet accords Bodhipatpadipa 4 greatnesses. We call Chewa Shinandimba. That is greatness of realizing all teachings of the Buddha as non-conflicting. Second, manifesting all scriptural treatises as pit instructions. Third, discovering with ease the Buddha's intent. And fourth, naturally seizing all grave wrongdoings. So these are the four greatnesses that is accorded to Bodhicitta Pradipika as a text that was composed by Atisa in Tibet for the Tibetan audience. Through this treatise, practitioners came to understand that various teachings in different traditions all constitute the Buddha's dharma. The relationship between Shravakayana and the Mahayana that constitutes both Bodhisattvayana and Vajrayana is not one of abandonment and adoption, but rather of applicability to different practitioners according to their motivations and dispositions. So that was the only great contribution that made clear to the practitioners in Tibet through Bodhicitta Pradipika. Because he covers, when you go through Bodhicitta Pradipika, it starts from the basic Shravakayana to the Pratikabhuddhayana's path to Mahayana, and it concludes with the Vajrayana practice. The Bodhicitta Pradipika primarily presents the Mahayana Buddhist spiritual path through the framework of three persons, those of lesser, middling, and supreme capacities. Atisa addresses the lesser and middling persons briefly as a precursor to his central focus, the presentation and practice appropriate for persons of supreme capacity following the Mahayana path. The supreme capacity person is defined in verse 5. Those persons, I quote, those persons who from the suffering in their own being truly wish to fully end all miseries of others are supreme. What distinguishes these individuals of supreme capacity is their profound wish to end the suffering of all beings, a motivation grounded in genuine understanding of their own experience of suffering. As most of us know, Buddhist teaching identify three types of suffering: the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering. Understanding all three types of suffering within themselves, supreme capacity persons develop strong compassion, not merely for themselves, but for all sentient beings, bound by repetitive rebirth in samsara. This compassion does not remain passive, failing, but transforms into a special intention called thaksam in Tibetan. This is something very important. The aspiration, this special intention, is the aspiration to personally end the suffering of all sentient beings. The defining characteristic is the combination of compassionate motivation with special resolve to accomplish this goal by oneself. Thus, the primary goal of the persons of supreme capacities is the wish to end the suffering of all sentient beings. The goal of ending the suffering of all sentient beings is undeniably ambitious. When we speak of all sentient beings, we refer to infinite sentient beings and consequently infinite suffering. Hence, no mundane method suffices for such a vast aspiration. Ordinary worldly knowledge cannot accomplish it. The only viable path is to become a completely enlightened Buddha, that is, to attain Bodhi and become a Buddha, the omniscient one. Paradoxically, then, attaining Bodhi is not the primary goal of the supreme capacity persons. Their primary aim is to benefiting others by ending their suffering. Yet, precisely to fulfill this aim, enlightenment becomes indispensable. This relationship is captured in Atisa's profound Mahayana slogan from the standard recitation of refuge in Bodhicitta across all Tibetan Buddhist traditions that I just recited at the end, which says at the beginning, Buddho bhavayam jagato hitayo. May I become Buddha for the benefit of the world. Just as the distinction between Buddhist and non-Buddhist practitioners is drawn by taking refuge in the three jewels, or philosophically by accepting the four seals, the distinction between Shravakyan and Mahayana is drawn by the generation of Bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, the mind wishing to attain Bodhi, the awakened mind, serves as the bedrock of Mahayana practice in both causal Paramityan and resultant Vajrayana. This paper examines the presentation of this fundamental concept and practice in the Bodhicitta Pradipika, exploring Bodhicitta as the gateway to the Mahayana path. After distinguishing the three types of practitioners, Atisa begins embodying instructions and methods for fulfilling the goal of supreme beings, that is, ending the suffering of all sentient beings and attaining complete enlightenment for that purpose. The teaching begins with the most crucial method, and that is arousing Bodhicitta. Bodhi is complete enlightenment. Genuinely wishing to achieve it for the benefit of all sentient beings is Bodhicitta. Such a mind does not arise spontaneously, but must be cultivated through proven methods and frequent training. Traditionally, two main methods exist for this mind training. The first, known as the pit instructions of 7 causes and effect, which belongs to the vast action system transmitted from Maitrenath, through Acharya Asanga, and eventually through Lama Selingpa to Atisa. The second, the profound view system of exchanging self with others, was transmitted from Manjushri through Acharya Nagarjuna and Shantideva and so on, who taught it in the Bodhicitta Avatara extensively. Although Atisa has both these lineages, in this paper, I focus only on the 7 causes and effect method as presented along the lines of the verses 10 to 11 of Bodhipatpradipa, which starts with beginning with an attitude of loving kindness for them all, regard all sentient beings who suffer through and with resolve, arouse the irreversible resolve to attain enlightenment. That is verse number 10 and 11. So the 7 causes and effect method consists of 6 causes, as mentioned by the previous speaker, and 1 result. The 6 causes are recognizing all sentient beings as one's mother from previous lives, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, generating loving kindness, generating great compassion, and developing this special intention. And these 6 are the causes which results in the 7th, Bodhicitta itself as the result. So what it means by recognizing all beings as one's mother is that practitioners must first train in recognizing all sentient beings as having been one's mother in innumerable lives taken throughout samsara. This recognition provides the foundation for the subsequent stages of practice. And through that, we come to the state of recognizing all beings as former mothers, and practitioners contemplate the kindness shown by one's present mother from the time in the womb through one's growth and development. So this kindness extends across species. Since we have taken countless rebirths, all sentient beings have at some point been our mother. After that comes the state where we wish to repay their kindness. After recognizing all sentient beings as mothers and remembering their kindness, a strong urge to repay that kindness naturally develops. Given the innumerable beings involved, repaying each individually proves impossible. Following the principle, think globally, act locally, practitioners begin with their present mother, extend these feelings to family members and neighbors, and gradually encompass all sentient beings. As all sentient beings includes those nearest to us, for the totality comprises each individual being. This leads us to generating loving kindness for all the sentient beings, which means developing a sense of loving kindness toward all mother-like sentient beings, means wishing them happiness. This loving attitude forms the basis for generating compassion, which is not a simple compassion transcends merely feeling pity for those who suffer. Genuine compassion involves an authentic urge to help beings become free from their suffering. Buddhist teaching identifies again 3 types of compassion: compassion focused on sentient being, compassion focused on phenomena, compassion, objectless compassion. In training the mind to generate bodhicitta, emphasis falls on compassion focused on sentient beings. As Atisa states in the root text, through understanding one's own suffering, one intends to end the suffering of all sentient beings. Now this leads us to the 6th cause, which is developing special intention. Special intention, or haksam in Tibetan, means resolving to personally end the suffering of all sentient beings. The text illustrates this through an analogy where when a child falls into a pit, most bystanders simply look for ways to rescue the child without immediately acting. However, if the child's parents are present, they will not hesitate to descend into the pit themselves. This parental urgency exemplifies special intention, the resolve to act personally rather than merely wishing others to act for the rescuing. This will lead to the result, the 7th, which is the result bodhicitta, because this special intention gives rise to the result bodhicitta, which is the aspiration to attain enlightenment in order to end the suffering of all sentient beings. The profound views, on the other hand, this is profound view system transmitted from Manjushri through Acharya Nagarjuna and Shantideva trains the mind through equalizing and exchanging oneself with others. The fundamental insight in that system is that self-cherishing keeps us bound in samsara. As stated in the 37th practice of Bodhisattva, perfect Buddhahood arises from the intention to benefit others. We remain trapped in cyclic existence through constantly clinging to self and acting selfishly, therefore equalizing oneself with others, relinquishing self-cherishing, and adopting other-cherishing attitude constitutes the essence of exchanging self with others. Acharya Shantideva teaches this practice in detail in the Samadhi chapter of Bodhicitta Avatara. So when the mind matures through such training, generating bodhicitta becomes possible. As the root text states, beginning with an attitude of loving kindness for them all to arouse the irreversible resolve to attain enlightenment. Although practitioners commonly take bodhicitta vows regardless of mental maturity, genuine bodhicitta requires training the mind through this methodical order and other systems so that it becomes fully prepared to generate authentic and irreversible bodhicitta. This parallels how well-cultivated and fertilized soil yields good crops, whereas uncultivated fields remain barren. Conventionally, bodhicitta is of two types, aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. Aspirational bodhicitta means aspiring to become a completely enlightened Buddha for benefiting all sentient beings, which in other words, in text it says, pledging the attainment of resultant body. On the other hand, engaged bodhicitta means pledging to engage in the causes of becoming Buddha, specifically training in the 6 perfections. According to Acharya Shantideva in Bodhicharya Avtara, the difference resembles wishing to travel somewhere and versus actually traveling. The wish, that is aspirational bodhicitta, corresponds to the aspirational bodhicitta, and the journey itself corresponds to the engaged bodhicitta. So training in aspirational bodhicitta requires several practices. The text goes through all in detail, remembering the benefits of arousing aspirational bodhicitta, training in arousing bodhicitta, maintaining commitment to not relinquishing sentient beings, abstaining from the 4 black dharmas and adopting the 4 white dharmas. Atisa quotes sutras describing innumerable benefits of aspirational bodhicitta. Bodhicitta serves as the root of all Buddhas, and hence it quotes several sutras in the text. So ideally, bodhicitta repeatedly one has to train by taking, arousing this mind 3 times daily and 3 times nightly, using the refuge and bodhicitta prayers that I just recited in the beginning. After generating aspirational bodhicitta, practitioners must continuously develop it, not only this life, but for future lives. And for this, we are told to abide by the precepts as mentioned in several sutras. However, without taking the vow of engaged bodhicitta, aspirational bodhicitta cannot reach its flourishing in yielding the resultant body for all sentient beings. Though one may generate bodhicitta without training in the bodhicitta practices of 6 perfections, complete enlightenment remains impossible. Hence, it is said in the text that it is necessary to receive the engaged bodhicitta vow. Ideally, practitioners should hold on in order to receive the engaged bodhicitta vow. It is said that practitioners should hold one of the 7 pratimoksha vows, which in ideal situation, but not according to other texts, it's not necessarily like that. And it should be received from a lama possessing 4 qualities and so on, that is given in detail. So the precepts of engaged bodhicitta mainly structured through the 3 disciplines that are the discipline of restraining negative conduct, and I've written these things but will not go through them in detail. And the second discipline is the discipline of benefiting sentient beings, which is shown through verse 28, 29 onwards. The first discipline of restraining negative conduct was shown from verse 27 onwards. And the discipline of gathering wholesome dharmas is the third discipline. So these are the 3 main disciplines that a bodhisattva abides by in terms of the engaged bodhicitta. Bodhisattvas are also identified by 3 types of aspirational frameworks corresponding to different degrees of courage: the king-like, the boatman-like, and the shepherd-like. The king-like resolve aspires to attain complete enlightenment first, then benefit all sentient beings, just as the king must first gain power before helping subjects. The boatman-like resolve aspires for enlightenment together with all sentient beings, reaching the destination simultaneously as the boatman and passenger arrive together. The shepherd-like resolve aspires for all sentient beings to achieve enlightenment first, with oneself following last, as shepherd ensures all sheep reach safety before attending to personal needs. These frameworks represent profound dimensions of aspiration according to the degree of courage or sharpness of intelligence, symbolically, not literally. Verses 29 of the Bodhicitta appears to reference the shepherd-like aspiration when it says, I quote, I'll take no delight in quickly attaining enlightenment for myself. With just one being as a person, I'll stay until the end of time. So with this, I conclude by saying that the Buddha's teachings across different yanas are so vast and profound, scattered throughout the Kangyur and Tengyur, so ordinary practitioners would not know where to begin. Hence, the Bodhicitta addresses this challenge by presenting the essence of Buddha's entire teaching for all practitioners from Shavakyana to Mahayana, and within Mahayana, both the followers of Paramitayana and the Vajrayana. Hence, Atisa presents teachings from all three yanas in concise form, focusing solely on practice from the practitioner's perspective. As he says in verse 52, because the text would be so long, I have not elaborated here, but for the sake of meditation, I have merely taught the tenets they prove. Hence, Bodhicitta as a sadhana text, a manual for spiritual practice. By presenting these teachings in such an accessible and practical form, Atisa bestowed upon us not merely a philosophical treatise, but a living manual for transformation. Hence, the Bodhicitta continues to illuminate the path of contemporary practitioners, demonstrating that the generation and cultivation of Bodhicitta remains the essential foundation for anyone aspiring to walk the Mahayana path toward complete enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable Dr. Karma Sonam Palmo, for your beautiful presentation. You spoke very eloquently and in detail about the Bodhicitta, and particularly about the Bodhicitta contribution and how to generate the Bodhicitta, and then the varieties of Bodhicitta, and then the steps to generation of the Bodhicitta, and so on. Now, this is such a wonderful concept of Bodhicitta that if we have that ubiquitous today, we may not be able to, we may not be needed to listen to the news of war that is happening all over. So I have this feeling when we heard about the Bodhicitta, when we listen about the Bodhicitta. Now we have a question and answer session. We have time of 20 minutes for question and answer. So please feel free to ask questions. Try to remain brief, to the point, and if possible, introduce yourself, and then tell us to whom you want to ask the question, from whom you expect to have the answer to your question. So please carry on. Geshila has a question first. Then after the Geshila, then we have Kaveri Gilji. Yeah.
My name is Taki, and thank you very much. Wonderful presentations. So my question is more general, but particularly Rinpoche too. When we reading to the biography of Atisa, he received to the Buddhist teaching 3 different teachers. And in some way, perspective of like Dhammarakkhita, we believe his school is Vivashika, and then other one is Mitiva, which is we believe in the sort of other Chidamanda traditions, and Selimba also. But do you think, or do you know, could you tell us what kind of little different version of Dekad teaching? Why Atisa? You already mentioned about the way he more grateful for the Selimba's teachings, but those other teachings, what kind of the method or some sort of like a version that's get received teaching from today. Thank you very
much. I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer this, but anyway, I will give my opinion. Actually, whenever we were taught that to receive a teaching that where it will be more effective is when you feel the karmic connection very strongly. Even though all the rest too, the great masters has trained beneficially to Atisa, but then when we have learned from the biographies, when Atisa heard the name of the Lama Silingpa at the first time, then there was a goosebump and all this sort of different emotional. So that's why I think one thing is very important. Similarly, like Melarapa, when he heard the name of the Marpa. So something there is, when we say not only qualified teacher, qualified student, but needs to have a very strong karmic connection. So I think that karmic connection has ripened. And similarly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama in our present time, and he says when he received the teaching from Kundalama Rinpoche, he had this similar feeling. So I think there's something to do with something karmic connection. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Kaveri Gilji, your question, please.
Thank you so much. Amazing panel. This is a question to Rinpoche and also Dr. Kamala. This practice of like ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta and the combination of two when we do the moon and vajra practice that His Holiness has. So what is the genesis of that?
So you mean the practicing of the arousing of the aspirational bodhicitta and the I think you mean what is the provenance of that?
So the first question is about what is the difference between ultimate bodhicitta or oh, division. No, tamjin interesting. The conventional bodhicitta is more focused on if we say the well-being of the sentient being, and to give this fully enlightenment to that sentient being. But then the ultimate bodhicitta is something I think that the more focused on the ultimate path on emptiness, and seeing the normally we say when we give the practice of generosity, and then it has to be held by the Korsom Mimi. How do we say that? The 3 cycles. So similarly, I think once you have the intention to help sentient beings, I think at the same time you have an influence of the ultimate bodhicitta, which is the understanding of the ultimate truth. So maybe like that. Then I really don't know about Vajrayana. I'm a very bad practitioner on this. So, but somehow His Holiness has continuously given this meditation to many of us. I think it is so lovely, because sometimes when you say bodhicitta, emptiness, and then we have symbols like moon, and then what was that? The Dojir Vajra, and it becomes like easy to hold actually. So it's visualization becomes much stronger. So I know that this symbol has to go much more deeper than what we think. But I think, how the symbols really work is something, a method to bring down this practice easier.
We have more questions. Please, Anila. Then after that, you, please. Please, there.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Legzum, and thank you very much for your presentations today. Bodhicitta is so important, so it's really wonderful to hear your presentations and explanations on this very important topic. So my question can be answered by anyone. It's open to all of you. And I really wanted to inquire and get your perspective on what you think is, we use this word compassion a lot, right? And you spoke also about how, when we talk about bodhicitta, cultivating great compassion is very important. But then when we look at this word compassion, right, we generally use this word compassion, but what does it really mean here when we're talking about great compassion? And also its relationship to looking at sentient beings, their suffering in samsara, right? And how important it is to understand renunciation. And what are we talking about when we say helping sentient beings be free from suffering, right? And how that relates to cultivating great compassion and bodhicitta.
I think that here compassion actually means thinking about the welfare of others. And the suffering, as you said, is different types of suffering that I mentioned first in the Bodhicharya Avatar, from the Bodhicharya Avatar, that a person's coming again and again to the world of birth and death, that is the greatest suffering. So the person, when he tries to, when the bodhisattva or the individual who has the bodhicitta, he must develop this compassion, that is, he wants to liberate all the individual beings from the from this suffering condition. That is, he wants that all the people, all the sentient beings, all the people, whatever they are doing, they must, they should not take birth and in this world of suffering again and again. That is, this is the compassion element of the bodhicitta.
Thank you very much. Anything else to add?
Yeah, I guess just to add in the same line, compassion versus great compassion, I guess, is the difference.
Yeah,
so
well,
compassion in general is like, when you see somebody, like in pain or something, you just try to help them by giving medicine or something. But I guess great compassion is to help them to see that they have been in this world repetitively taking birth, and how, the three types of suffering actually, because the all-pervasive suffering is not evident, right? So when you have this great compassion, you are actually experiencing and have understood all three types of suffering, because just pain and all, they are just suffering of suffering. That is, everybody, without bodhicitta also we have compassion, right? Somebody, they can help with some medications or anything. But great compassion, I guess, in terms of bodhicitta is to, to help all the sentient beings come out of the three types of suffering, and to help them, be free from samsara. Ultimately, if it is from the middling person view, just a liberation from this samsara, but from the Mahayana perspective, to be completely enlightened as a Buddha. So I guess compassion in terms of bodhicitta is to help sentient beings come out of this, suffering from the samsara of repetitive cyclic, taking birth in cyclic existence.
Another reason may be that the one who is thinking about the welfare of the others may try to explain to those sentient beings about the nothingness, or about the non-essentiality of all the elements of the world, and so that the ordinary people can get rid of the three types of kleshas. So, and when the individual is free from from this sort of kleshas, this sort of misunderstanding, he will or avidyas, then he will not be led to the take birth again in this world. So that is also a kind of intention of the person who has the compassion in mind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Please, your question.
My question is addressed to Karmaji and Madhumita-ji. It is about the word Bodhicitta. That is, how do we understand, how do we derive the word Bodhicitta? Because Bodhi is not Buddha, it is not Buddha Chitta. Enlightened mind will not be the correct translation of Bodhicitta. So sometimes the word which was used was Bodhau Chittam. So the mind oriented towards Bodhi or say focused on Bodhi. So some such meaning may be better. So you can throw some light on that.
Sir, may I say? The word, as I showed in my slide, that the term, the Bodhicitta, can be divided into two words, that is Bodhi and Chitta. And sorry, the word Bodhi is derived from the root Budh to mean knowledge. So the word Bodhi can be taken to mean knowledge or enlightenment. Therefore, the term means wisdom, enlightenment. And Chitta, on the other hand, means mind. Therefore, Bodhicitta can be regarded as a desire for enlightenment, or a mind turning towards enlightenment. That is what is what I think is the meaning of the term. In its most common usage, the term Bodhicitta refers to the resolution to attain enlightenment in order to liberate all living beings. So it is a kind of resolution on the where the mind turns towards enlightenment, so that the Bodhisattva is able to liberate all the sentient beings of the world. That is the way I have understood.
Karmala, do you have any answer for that? Okay. Okay, we have time for a little bit more questions. Please carry on.
There was one question before, I think, in the earlier session, I think. But I think we can answer here since all the speakers and also the panel. So there was one question. It says, historically, it is mentioned about the study period of Atisa in Surandipa at that time. So my question is there any relation between this institution in Surandipa with the Nalanda University at that time? Perhaps additional question is there any reference for the answer why did Atisa choose Surandipa instead of Nalanda University, Bihar at that time, if these two institutions were in the same area or a period of time?
According to my knowledge, it also says that in the biography of the Atisa, it says that Guru Surandipa, the Dharmakirti, happened to be in India, in Bodh Gaya for some time. And his fame rose from there as a kind of a scholar and as a practitioner. And after that, he returned back to Surandipa, and then unfortunately, before he returned back to Surandipa, he didn't meet the kind of Atisa. They didn't have that opportunity. So when Atisa was searching for a guru, then he came to know about the fame of the Surandipa, and he was kind of really moved from that. And then there are some relationship between kind of a presence of Guru Surandipa in Bodh Gaya, but we don't have a clear kind of a narrative of Guru Surandipa visiting Nalanda or not. That part I'm not sure about. So have any more questions? We have a space for one more question. Okay, if we don't have any more questions, let's pray. May the Bodhicitta kind of grow in the heart of every living being, so that every living being will enjoy infinite happiness. Okay, thank you.